Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today we will be talking about bronze cannons found on shipwrecks and how important they are for the research. Stay till the end of the video because it's interesting. Let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, if you want to watch the video in other languages, you simply click on settings, go to subtitles, select the subtitles in the original language, then go back to subtitles, activate the translate automatically, and scroll down and select your preferred language. In this case, we chose Spanish, obviously. Thank you so much all, and let's get on with the video.
Bronze cannons on shipwreck are not that common of a find. They don't show up in every shipwreck you find. For instance, I have been working in more than 300 shipwrecks and only few of them would have bronze cannons. And that has reasons. Bronze cannons that normally the artillery of the shipwrecks of the time, it was made either of bronze, or brass, or iron. Bronze cannons were the most expensive pieces in the ship. They were very expensive because of the type of material they were made, also because they last much longer in the ships and as an active life. They didn't get rusted to the speed and the characteristic of the iron cannons. So they were precious objects in the ship. In any case, in any situation in which the ship it's in bad condition and need to be scuttled, or if it ran aground, one of the first things that they recovered, they salvaged from the ships, were the bronze cannons. For these reasons: first, because they were expensive pieces, and second, because they would need to defend themselves, even if the ship sank, and then you have to make a small camp nearby in the beach. You will need some artillery to defend yourself. Bronze cannons came very handy for that. So they were priority in the salvage efforts made right after the sinking or any other accident. Of course, if a ship was in bad condition and was to be left alone, bronze cannons were the first thing that they took away. That justifies, in a way, that bronze cannons are not such a common find when you find historic shipwrecks. There is also another reason. For instance, in Cuba, I'm talking about Cuba because I spent 14 years working there. It was the country in which we found and explored more shipwrecks, and over 128 if I'm not mistaken, and we never found one single bronze cannon. It seems like a mystery because in proportion it was expected to find at least some. Reason behind this, aside of what I already mentioned, I was talking to a fisherman in the town of Arroyos de Mantua in the north of Pinar del Rio, the western province in Cuba. He was a very old man. Pitaluga was his family name. And he said that during the Second World War, the price of the scrap metal went up drastically. So every fisherman in the area, they went around in the reefs, and wherever they knew there was this kind of objects, bronze or iron cannons, and they would obviously recover bronze first because it was much higher price, and then also some of the iron guns. That, together with the fact that bronze cannons were recovered first after wreckage, it would explain the scarcity of bronze cannons in the reefs of Cuba and other countries as well. So that was so important and so, in a way, surprising for us that finding a bronze cannon in Cuba became like an obsession for all of us. We were all really looking forward to find the bronze cannon. And now I will tell you why bronze cannons are important for research. First, because they are beautiful pieces. They are a beautiful object. They were made at the time, it was like the top of the technology. And bronze itself, or brass, I always have a problem differentiating one to the other, but okay. Bronze and brass, they have a high content of copper. Copper, when it oxidizes, it produces this copper oxide that is highly poisonous. Very few marine organisms will attached to a surface that contains this substance. So the result is that the bronze cannons or brass cannons, you will find them mostly clean. So that makes a very beautiful artifact in the middle of a context which everything is covered by coral or algae. So it's a very beautiful piece. Second is that also thanks to this characteristic of the metal is made, you can also get a lot of information from the cannon still when it's on the water, before removing it, before giving it conservation. So like on real time, when you find a cannon, bronze cannon or brass cannon, you will be able most probably to see marks, shields, even the name of the founder, the year in which was made, the country, the weight. Some of them even have serial numbers, which will help tremendously in the research, in the archives of it, to try to place that cannon into a certain ship or to a certain fleet into a certain year. So they are precious artifacts for the research and for gathering information. And also another reason why they are so important is because for the reasons I mentioned before, as how precious they were also for the crew of the ship that lost them, and then for everyone trying to sell scrap metal. When you find a wreck with bronze cannons, it almost guarantees that it hasn't been disturbed, at least recently, or that in the moment of the sinking of the ship there was not totally salvaged. That will obviously be more interesting for you because you have higher chances of finding artifacts that will help you telling the story of that particular shipwreck. So all in all, bronze cannon are a very sought after artifact when you are in the field of shipwreck research. Having said this, again, in Cuba we didn't find any in 14 years, with more than 100 wrecks investigated and studied, and that became like a goal for all of us. We wanted to find bronze cannon. I remember information from fishermen in remote places of the country that they would come and say, we found a cannon, but this cannon is not the same as we have seen before. It's like much more clean. Obviously, all of us, we expected, okay, it's a bronze cannon. Entire expeditions were made based on this information of one person, of one cannon, not even a wreck. So you can imagine how obsessive we were in locating any of these pieces. As any of my colleagues in Cuba, me, all of us, I end my time in Cuba, my 14 years of career in Cuba, without having seen myself one single bronze cannon. Of course, I exported this necessity, this need of finding bronze cannon with me to any other country that I have been working, and I have to say that I was greatly rewarded with the amount of bronze cannons I have been able to find and to study in different shipwrecks, and I want to share that with you today. So after Cuba, when I started working in Cape Verde, I transmit to my crew this urge to locate bronze cannons and explain how important these pieces were. So I even put a kind of price on their heads, so telling the crew, well, if any of you find a bronze cannon, we will have a day off. Day off were a very good currency because we were working so hard and it was so tiring that a day off, it was welcome for everyone. Everyone would love to have an extra day off. We were having a day off once a week, but the work on the water in Cape Verde was really hard. It was really tiring. Actually, after 2 years, and in a particular wreck in the Lady Burgess that we will working in such an adverse conditions, I set a system with 2 days off, not in a row, but one, let's say, on Wednesday and on Sunday when we were in expedition, because people we really need the rest. So a day off was cool, and I even said I will give a day off per each bronze cannon you find. So I didn't know it would be, I should have been more specific.
That was a bit cocky, maybe now.
That was, that people really understood that I was crazy to find a bronze cannon. And when we were working in the Princess Luisa in the north of the island of Mayo, and then we discovered the Schimmelmann in the Bahia do Galeão, in the Bay of the Galleon, and we were still investigating the wreck. When I went one of these trips that I went to land in the car to the hotel to send and receive emails in that very rustic way, when I came back, the Zodiac, that went to pick me up in the coast, well, instead of the boatman, that it was the only person that normally picked me up in the coast, they came with two divers. And they were smiling and they were laughing. And in the way back to the ship, one of them asked me, "Boss, what do you say about the days off because of the bronze cannon? Do you keep your word?" I said, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, of course." And he said, "And what about if I tell you that we found 10? Well, then, I mean, how's it? Yeah, we found 10 and we have them in the ship." And that, it really scares me out. Because normally you find this kind of piece and you find, we were in the phase of exploring the Schimmelmann. Because it was in the Schimmelmann. In the Princess Luisa, we knew that there was no bronze cannon. But in the Schimmelmann, we didn't know enough of the boat. And normally you find these kind of pieces. We were still in the exploration phase. There was no plan yet to remove anything from the ship, much less something like 10 cannons. That's absolutely nonsense. And then I got a little bit angry. I said, "How come that you pick up 10 cannons?" I had in my mind, like I think everyone, okay, these bronze cannons that were over a ton or 2 tons weight. I mean, these are huge cannons. This is an operation that you cannot do in the 2.5 hours that I went to send emails and come back. It's moving the ship and the cranes and I mean, it's a hell of an operation. You cannot just get away with that in 2 hours. And they said, no, because they're small. They are like this. That was new to me. I said, well, just bronze cannons like this. 10 of them. So, well, I arrive in the ship. Obviously, I negotiate the days off because 10 days off, then just because of the size of the cannons, I say, "Hey, guys, I was talking about big cannons, not these little cannons that is like 20 minutes off. It's not a day off." So I was really excited because obviously it was my first bronze cannons, I mean, from my team, my crew that we found. And on top of it, they were strange. It was small. They were not even highly ornamented. They were all the same size, about 45 centimeters long, and beautiful. They were clean. We obviously sent them to the lab at the conservation center, and they were properly conserved. But even before sending it to the conservation center, you could read the inscriptions, which were not many. It were more consecutive numbers from 1 to 10, which made me think, okay, I asked them, where do you find them? There are photos of the cannons. They took photos, they took measurements, and they were all in a very small area on the seabed, making you think that, okay, probably was a crate that was transporting these cannons and it broke down, and then the cannons, they don't move that much because they are heavy. They're small, but they're heavy. So that was a first finding of bronze cannons. I learned at that moment when I started researching what that could be, because first I thought they were ornaments, small bronze cannon to put in the cabin of the captain or for a present for someone, but they were not that decorated. They were not that ornamented. They were kind of utilitarian pieces. You could see that they were meant more to work than to impress by their beauty. So I started researching, and I found out that they were what we call signal guns. They were guns that they were used to make signals, because obviously there was no radio at the time. The communication between ships was mostly by a code of cannon shots.
And it's probably expensive to fire artillery cannon every time you want to communicate with another ship, I guess.
Exactly. They may have done that, and there are records that they have done that, okay, in distress, when the ship was really in a problem. But the normal communication, like, okay, slow down, we need to get close to give you some supplies or take some supplies from you, or send me the doctor.
Yeah.
I have ill people. Those were communications made by these signal guns.
Yeah.
Less powder to be used, loud enough for the other ship to hear, and they had this sort of communication very well established between the fleets. So we were so lucky that we found one box of these signal guns that was my first bronze cannon but just few months after leaving Cuba. Starting working in Cape Verde, we already hit the first bronze cannons. They were not as big as I expected. But then on in the same wreck, when we continued the excavation in the wreck, we had also the luck to find a second box of another 10 of these cannons. So in total, we recovered 20 bronze cannons from that wreck, 20 signal guns. And this second box, again, came with a little surprise, because the cannons were as small as the others, but not exactly the same. They were 55 centimeters long, when the other box, the cannons were 45 centimeters long. Why they make it different, can't tell. but it was obvious that it was the same function in the ships. And as they were carried in boxes, it is kind of clear or evident that they were being sent to China, either to be sold or to be given. I mean, they were not in use in the ship at that moment. So these were my first group of bronze cannons, and for the first group it were 20. I think we made it right. Then we had the second wreck. I already made a video on that one, where we found two composite guns. I explained in the other video, so you can go check on the video which type of cannons are composite guns, but I will count them as well as bronze because the cover of the cannon, I mean the skin of the cannon was made of copper. Even if inside were different materials, the skin of the cannon was made of copper. Those were richly decorated. They were beautiful cannons. I will put some pictures in this video so you can admire them. Also, it had the weight in Amsterdam pounds written on the cannon. They were beautiful pieces as they normally are. That was between August and September of 1999. So 2 months or 3 months inside my new expeditions out of Cuba, and we already had 22 bronze cannons. Very happy for that. The next finding of this kind of pieces, we made it in Ciudad de Vella. Ciudad de Vella was the old port and city of the island of Santiago in Cape Verde. Now the capital then moved to Ciudad de Praia, but Ciudad de Vella was originally the settlement, the most important settlement, and the ship arrived there, a ship from many nations. So it is actually a kind of, if we can call it like that, it's a kind of graveyard of shipwrecks. There are plenty of historic shipwrecks in the area where the archaeological context is, sometimes the archaeological context is overlapping one to the other. It makes it quite difficult to study because it's difficult to tell apart when are you working in a 16th century ship or a early 17th century, which are very close geographically, I mean one almost on top of the other. So Ciudad de Vella was a place we visited with certain frequency. Also we get some supplies from shore. After some days we go days off. Normally we took our ship there, people went to land and they were home and has the day off in land. And Ciudad de Vella was a place that we visited quite often. There we also found bronze verso or swivel gun. This is not only, it was beautiful and big, there was already more like the bronze cannons I was dreaming with. Not only was in perfect condition and it was a beautiful bronze cannon, but also it was very old, because versos or swivel guns, they were used in the Portuguese ships and Spanish ships and plenty of in different nations as well, but they were used mainly in the 16th century or very early in the 17th century. So by 1620 or 1630, most of the countries, they wouldn't use them anymore and they replaced them by demi-culverins or demi-cannons or other type of cannons or pieces of artillery. The verso, it's also what we call a breech loader. It's a cannon that you load in the back. Contrary to the normal artillery, you know, from old ships with muzzle loaders, they were load from the muzzle, from the mouth of the cannon. You would put the powder and top to the powder and then the ball, and then you press it and you have this capsule in which you will fire. In the case of the verso, these swivel guns, breech loaders, they have what we call a block, which is a separate piece that you load aside. So one cannon, for instance, would have 5 or 6 of these blocks. So you can put the block in the cradle, move it, fix it, fire the cannon, take the block out, put another one. It was much more efficient because the frequency of shots, of firing, it was much higher than the muzzle loader. Although they were quite slender, they were quite thin, light, they wouldn't get that far and they wouldn't fire projectiles big enough. They were more like anti-infantry instead of anti-naval vessels. It wouldn't sink a ship, but it will be anyway a very dangerous weapon. And this cannon was really beautiful. It was deep. It was about, well, deep in terms of the shipwrecks we were working. It was about 22 meters deep or something. And we took it up to the lab. We recovered it. We took it to the lab in the conservation center. They did a marvelous work with that. And the cannon obviously has this beautiful esfera armilar from the Portuguese, the coat of arms of the crown, and it's a beautiful pieces. Today in the museum in Praia, you can see it is a beautiful piece. I will try to put some pictures here as well. And that was, let's say, like the first classic bronze cannon that I was looking for, and that was already in the year 2000. I was super happy. Cape Verde was demonstrating being very rich in this kind of underwater cultural heritage that is, as I explained, is something that you don't find that often, but in Cape Verde we were lucky finding these cannons. Then our expedition moved to Mozambique in the year 2000 to start the survey and exploration of the province of Nampula in the center of the country. And during our first couple of months of survey, we found what we later identify as the Espadarte, a 1558 Portuguese ship that was coming from Macau with the first consignment of Chinese porcelain to Europe. And between the ballast stones of the wreck, we found this beautiful small swivel gun also made of bronze. And this one had also a peculiarity. It didn't only bear the esfera almirar or armilar sphere, the symbol of Portuguese epics of the discoveries, but it also had two inscribed letters pertaining to the founder. And that is something really attractive from the research point of view, because they were the letters AG, will go for Antonio Gomes, a known founder in Portugal. Actually, it was a family of founders, but Antonio Gomes in particular, he worked between this year and the other year. So this is very useful in your research. That's what I mentioned in the beginning, that bronze cannons were so much sought after, because it's not only the beauty of the piece, it's the information it can give you, even sometimes even under the water. To recover a bronze cannon, I mean, to excavate and recover a bronze cannon, take it out of the water, you need a lot of preparation. You cannot simply go and pick it up if you don't have the conditions for its conservation, if you don't have the conditions created with its transport from the pier to the conservation center. If you don't have everything prepared, you better don't touch that piece, because you could damage it, or you could just simply take it out of context for no reason or for the wrong reasons. And that also gives you the urge, because you already found the cannons and you want to know the most you can about the wreck where they belong. So being blessed with the characteristic that the copper, it doesn't get so much encrusted, you could even read all this information I'm telling you about the esfera almirar and the A and G. You can see that under the water. For that, you don't need to take the cannon out. So all this information you already have, even if you haven't recovered the cannon yet. So this was our first bronze cannon in Mozambique. Very early into the expeditions, we were very happy with it. The next bronze cannons find in Mozambique, it had bittersweet taste to it. We were informed of some bronze cannons that were in the south side of the island of Moma, in the south of island of Mozambique, quite far away, but still in the province of Nampula, which was our area of study. And we went there to Moma Island, into the south part of the island, in the edge of the reef. We found what later we identify as Nossa Senhora da Guia, a 1719 Portuguese ship that sank there in the way to India. The site of the wreck was a beautiful scene to watch when we went into the water. Crystal clean water, 6 beautiful bronze cannons laying on the floor, huge ones, huge bronze cannons, all full of all these inscriptions that I have mentioned, that they are so important to us. So immediately we went there, measurements were taken, few photographs, because I'm talking about early 2000. The equipment to take photographs was by far not even close to what we got later. The easiness of making underwater photography was not the same. We were still settling in Mozambique, so most of our equipment hasn't arrived yet. We took some photographs, we make a site plan, and we left super happy of having found a wreck with 6 bronze cannons, meaning that whatever was on board of the ship would be still around, because there was obviously not a big effort to salvage the ship. In 2004, we returned to the place with the intention of getting deeper into our research and excavate certain areas. And sadly, we found that there was only one bronze cannon from the 6 that we saw 3 years earlier or 4 years earlier. So 5 of the other bronze cannons have been removed. There are another 15 iron cannons. So the entire dotation of artillery from the ship was on the seabed. But the bronze cannons being more attractive, more expensive, they were removed in 3 years. 5 of them were removed. The only one that was left, it was actually a little bit encrusted in the rocks in the way found. It was difficult to remove. And then in 2010 we went again with the intention of bringing it back to put it in the conservation lab, and it was not there anymore. So that's what I mentioned, it's bittersweet, because this also explained the urge of finding, studying and protecting underwater cultural heritage around the world, because these objects are not there forever. Aside of the natural degradation that they will suffer because being in the water, which is not what they were built for, then there are these events, people, unknown persons. We don't know who removed these cannons, obviously. But the fact is that from 6 beautiful bronze cannons to none, it only passed 10 years. 10 years, and in the first 3 years, there were 5 of them gone. The last one was difficult to remove, but still, it was taken out as well. So from those cannons, I still have photos. We recorded the most information we could from them at the moment. Thanks God, because otherwise it would have been lost to research. It has been lost to science. It has been lost to academy. So this is a, let's say, like a half sad example of what could happen, but still I'm happy I have come across to a site with these 6 beautiful bronze cannons. Our next find, still in Mozambique, it was the cannons from the San Jose. That is now like a positive note. The cannons of the San Jose gave us a lot of information. The cannons of the San Jose were beautiful, belonging to one of the most sophisticated ships in that fleet, which was the Almiranta of the fleet. I mean, a very good ship, and certainly it has like probably the best of the bronze cannons that were available for the Portuguese fleet before going to Goa, India. The San Jose, we found San Jose was, I would make a video on the San Jose, on the entire shipwreck, because the story of the San Jose is super interesting and it's a very peculiar wreck in many aspects. But here I would mention that the San Jose is a wreck that has a very large scattering field. The scattering field of wreck material, it goes up to 4.5 kilometers, almost 5 kilometers, since the first object you see from the wreck till the last object we have found, downwind. So with the waves and with the winds, the predominant waves and winds in the area, that spread the wreck material for 5 kilometers. So locating anything within the scattering field, debris field of the San Jose is quite a task, because it's a very long area. And these 4 bronze cannons, the first 3 bronze cannons in the San Jose, we found them laying on the seabed in the same way I have mentioned that they were easily spotted, because they are green and they are not very covered by sea growth. But in this case, they haven't been taken out because they were quite deep for the local population or for the fishermen of the area. They were about 20 meters deep. And I knew that the fishermen know the place, or nearby the place, because they have mentioned it to me many times. They said, Alex, we have seen cannons that we think they are copper or they are bronze. We have seen cannons in this area, but for them it was deep. And the divers or the people with more tools that would come with bottles and with the means to remove these cannons, they would not know the place, because the wreck is in the middle of nowhere. It's not related to any reef or to any point that you will visit for taking pictures of fish or whatever you do under the water, and then you can come across randomly through the wreck. No, this is a wreck that either you go look for it and you're very lucky to find it, or you will never come to that wreck. So the cannons were there, and beautiful pieces, huge cannons of over 2.5 tons each. It was the first 3 cannons that we recovered. They had, again, all this wonderful information, the coat of arms of artillery house in this where they were made. They were made one in Portugal, one in Spain, one in Italy, in Venice. It's beautiful, and with the name of the artillery chief at the time. They were super useful in our research. The fourth of the bronze cannons found in the San Jose, it was found already excavating the wreck, so it was under about 1.5 meters of sand, so that one was not visible. And for that characteristics of its location, it was really, really clean and in a very good conservation state. So when it was excavated by us and put in the conservation center, after conservation, it was a beautiful image of a cannon, almost as if it would have been recently made. It is a very beautiful Portuguese cannon. It's the oldest of the cannons, and if I'm not mistaken, I have to look into the photo, I'm not mistaken, it's also from the Gomez family. It was not Antonio Gomez anymore, but I think it was a son of his. The San Jose is 1622, the Spadarte, when the Antonio Gomez cannon was found, is 1558, so there are like 70 years in the middle, so it may be the grandson. So, but it was someone from the Gomez family. As I said, in the positive note, these cannons were properly recovered, archaeologically excavated, conserved, studied, published, so the information, the cannons are still there in Mozambique, in what was our conservation center, and they are viable for research. You don't have to dive to find these cannons and to do that again. They are there. Technical information or archaeological information on the cannons is published. The cannons are there. You can go confirm everything that has been written, and they were saved for our knowledge. So I'm very happy with the intervention of the cannons in the San Jose. The next finding of bronze cannons in Mozambique, well, it's a peculiar one because this time we didn't find the cannons in the water, but on board of a truck that was driving to a scrap metal place to be sold and converted into scrap. I have mentioned that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're also a land archaeologist, from what I hear.
Exactly, you have to be alert. we were driving between Ilha Mozambique and Nampula to make our shopping for essential supplies, and in our car was a truck with 3 cannons in the back of the truck, and they were driving. I immediately saw these cannons, talked to the driver and to the fishermen that were on board of the truck, and bought the cannons from them. We got into the deal of that they would show us where they got them from, because that was actually what interested us most, because they were very beautiful cannons. There were 2 swivel gun, 2 versos, the bronze versos, also quite old, and one which is called Pedreiro, which is a cannon that throws stone shots. Instead of iron or lead shot, it will throw stone shots. Stone shots were quite big, so the mouth, the bore of the cannon, it was quite wide. It's a very interesting piece. It's not that common either to find this kind of cannon today. So looking at those cannons, I immediately identified that the wreck where they came from was actually much more important than these pieces themselves. So we got into conversation with them, we started collaborating with them, then with us, and then they show us where they found it. And yes, as we expected, it was a wreck. We ended up identifying the wreck as the Sao Tomé dos Burgaleses of 1547. That was a wreck that we also explored later on, and we found a very interesting cargo of copper ingots from the mines of Hungary by the Fugger family, a prominent German mining family which still today exists, and they made those copper ingots from the Hungarian mines, put them in the Portuguese ship and sent it to India. They unfortunately sunk in Mozambique for us to go find it almost 500 years later. It is a great story. It is a very interesting shipwreck from the 16th century, and we were only able to get to that wreck because we saw the fishermen with the cannons in the truck. And this is where I come back to the Nossa Senhora da Guia story. If, let's say, we wouldn't meet the fishermen with the cannons in the way to the scrap metal, those elements were removed from the place. So if you are even exploring, if you are searching for a shipwreck, you will not have elements to stop and see and say, okay, there is a shipwreck here. There was very little to be seen on the side, aside of the cannons that have been taken away. They even told us that, many years ago we also removed 3 or 4 more. So there were more cannons, and this was the last 3. So again, luckily, we came across them, we got the cannons, we conserved the cannons, studied them and published them. So this information has also been saved. So up to here, we were finding bronze cannons in Mozambique quite frequently. The shipwrecks are in Mozambique of very difficult access. That will explain in a way why there's still bronze cannons in the shipwrecks of Mozambique, because they are of very difficult access. Even for the modern times and the modern equipment, it takes a bit of luck as well to come across these shipwrecks. But that was my bronze cannon experience in Mozambique. Then I have an interesting twist, because I was called by, me and my team, we were called from a group in Brazil that they had come across what they thought it was a shipwreck. And it has a cannon on it. And so they took some photos. On the water visibility in the area was not that great. The shipwreck is located in the south of Santa Catarina Island, in the Florianópolis area, in the south of Brazil. So water gets cold and it's quite greenish and not very transparent, so visibility was not great. They took the best photos they could. They sent them to me and asked me, what do you see coming over here, and check if this is actually a wreck and if it has any importance. So I went there to do like an evaluation of the wreck, an assessment, archaeological assessment of the wreck site, to then recommend which actions to be taken by the organizations or the authorities that would take care of that resource. So I went into the place. This one was a little bit surprising also, because when I dove in the site, it was a wreck all the way. I mean, it was an entire pile of ballast stones. The cannon was sitting on top of the ballast. Part of the cannon was under the ballast, but most of it was visible. There was an anchor nearby. There were some traces of wood from the hull. So it was a wreck, no question. But the cannon was puzzling because it was as covered, the surface of the cannon was as covered as what you will see in iron guns. It looked that it was covered with the concretion of the oxidization of the iron, as other cannons that they get these bulbs and all this misshapen surface. There was also something odd when you look at this concretion. So with my hand and the glove, I went and scratched it hard, and surprised, most of this concretion was actually is a kind of a sea animal, an invertebrate that is called ascidians, and they are soft like sponge or almost jellyfish, but they live attached to the seabed or to a rock or to something. They got attached onto the cannon. Apparently they were somehow immune to this copper oxide, and they had it completely covered. The appearance, it was like really hard concretion, but when you move it with your hand, I left the cannon fairly clean. As clean as, well, immediately I realized that was bronze, a bronze cannon, but as clean as that you could read the date of the cannon, which was 1582, if I'm not mistaken, so a very old cannon, the weight of the cannon, the coat of arms of Spain, and it was just beautiful piece, huge cannon as well. Later on, thanks to the information from this cannon, we start closing the circle around what wreck could be, and we end up finding that was the San Esteban from 1583, that it was this ship also. The wreck has a very interesting story that I will come to you in another video, because this was a ship that was going to the Magellan Strait to set up a fortress, and you will see why we know that and which kind of pieces we found on the wreck in the first inspections. So this was a bronze cannon that practically came to me from very far in Brazil when I was working in Mozambique, and that was like my bronze cannon finding in the Americas. And my last finding of bronze cannons in my career was, and it couldn't be other way, it was in Indonesia. When I started working in Indonesia about 2007, 2008, we found a shipwreck which was quite deep, about 50 some meters deep in the Java Sea. Actually, it was not in the Java Sea, but was between the Bangka Belitung province, which is a province that includes the island of Bangka, the island of Belitung, and the Strait of Bangka, the Karimata Strait, and the Gaspar Strait. There are three straits that made that area very heavy traffic during many centuries. Most of the trade of Southeast Asia has gone up and down these straits, from the Southeast China to Indonesia, then up to Malaysia. All this area was of heavy commercial traffic. That obviously, along centuries and centuries, it left plenty of casualties, shipwrecks occur, and we were lucky to find several of them. In one of them, which we still don't know the name, it may have been either British ship of mid-1800s or a ship of mid-1800s that was working with the British or with the British cargo, because many of the plates and bottles and objects that you find in that we observed in this wreck, because we didn't excavate the wreck, we just explore it. Most of the objects are either of British origin or Indian origin, but under the British rule, because the houses, the stamps on the plates in the back, they were from Manchester and Liverpool. So it was certainly a ship with British influence. And within the objects that you could see on the seabed, we found this beautiful bronze cannon. Now we are talking about a very different bronze cannon of what, well, it was not only one, there were few of them, and they're very different to what we have seen so far, because these are the so-called Lantakas. Lantakas were these kind of bronze cannon made in Southeast Asia, but for either the Dutch or the British or the Portuguese, but they were casted, founded in Southeast Asia in different cities, and obviously they took the shape and the decoration proper of Southeast Asia. The founders, the people who work in the making of these cannons, obviously put all this beautiful culture and rich culture they have into the cannon. So these are cannons that the bore, the mouth of the cannon, instead of being the boring European cannon, which is just like a pipe, those had the head of a dragon and this all decorated. The barrel of these cannons, also of the Lantakas, they were not like the usual cylinder of the European cannons. They were more octagonal. In general, these Lantakas were the jewel in the crown for my findings of bronze cannons. If I actually wanted, if I was expecting to find the bronze cannons I never managed to find in my life, this came as an unexpected find, because I couldn't even envisage our team finding these so richly decorated cannons and these beautiful pieces. So for that I have to thank Indonesia. It gave us this marvelous experience of being able to find these cannons. One day these wrecks will be excavated and these cannons will be displayed in a museum, and everyone will be able to enjoy the same way as we did. Well, and thank you guys for staying until the end of the video. I hope it was interesting for you. I know bronze cannons and stuff is a subject that may not be such an interesting subject for everyone, but I think if you get into it, you will start understanding and enjoying the same way as we do. Let's keep in touch. Leave your comments in the comment section, like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and again, if you have any questions, let me know. I will be there to answer questions of everyone. So let's keep in touch and keep on diving.